We're almost down on the creek. Now, understanding how gold moves in gravels and fluid has a big part or a big role to play in how much gold you will find at the end of the day and how you set your equipment up. This is something that the old timers knew very well because they spent nearly their whole life chasing gold. So they knew an awful lot about how gold moves in creeks and rivers and how it gets deposited in gravels. Alrighty, well, we'll go down to the creek. I'll show you this bend where I'm going to work. And I'll start to explain why there's gold sitting on top. And those that have watched previous videos will know that I've said, if you're finding gold in gravel, it's normally hard packed gravel. Well, this is different. This is very loose gravel and the gold's sitting right on top. So I'll go further into that and I'll explain why it is that it's sitting on top in loose gravel. Here we are down on the creek. Nice clear water. And I bet you it's going to be cold. Alright, so we're looking back upstream now. And you can see we've got a bluff of rock right on the bend. Now, creek comes around, hits this bluff of rock and it pushes that water back this way. So the big gravel bar that's right on the bend gets chewed out. The back side of that gravel bar gets chewed out because the water pressure hits this bar of rock and pushes everything back this way. So once again, we've got another gravel bar underneath this vegetation. And just on the other side, we've got one of those little washout areas. Now, I was out here a while ago and we've got this area of bedrock right here. And just in behind that area of bedrock, I was picking up gold, or I was actually panning gold straight off the top. Now, when you look at what's behind the bedrock, it's a very fine silt. But sitting on top of that silt, we've got this fine gravel. Now it's not hard packed, you can see that. I can just move it very easily with my finger. That's what the gold's in. Now, I know I've said to people, and I know I've said in previous videos that you don't very often find gold in very finely or loosely packed gravel. That is the majority of the time. There are certain circumstances where gold will actually sit in fine, loose packed gravel and sands. And this is one of these areas where it will occur. Now there's a reason behind that. And this is where you've got to understand how gold moves in flood material, and particularly during a flood. So we've got an area of bedrock here, which isn't going to change much at all. It'll get a little bit of wear as the rocks are rolling across the top here, but we've got a very sharp drop off behind this bar of rock. So you've got the flood materials travelling along, and then they've got this big drop behind this bit of bedrock. So what's going to happen is, as this flood, or as this creek floods, you're going to have all this material bouncing along the bottom. It's getting pushed across from that bar of rock that's running across the creek. It's bouncing along, and then you've got a low pressure point straight there. So all this stuff's going to drop behind it. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit more difficult to understand. During a flood, that will possibly fill right up to there with gravel. Because you've got so much material moving over and you've got a low pressure point, it will fill up just like a riffle in a sluice. So why is that now like this? As the flood water is dying down and the water is starting to recede, the water flow that's travelling over that lessens. And that low pressure point stops becoming that low pressure point because the water running over it will actually start to lose its momentum. instead of travelling straight off the top of it, it will actually want to drop down. And what that means is all the gravel that's sitting at this height during the flood, it starts getting chewed away because the water's not travelling like this. The water starts to drop off and it starts pulling away the gravel that's built up behind it during the flood. But you still get this low pressure area. During the flood, the low pressure area is out here. As the flood starts receding, the low pressure area decreases and becomes smaller, and it starts to form right at the base of this bedrock. So it will leave the gold. The gold's going to be still sitting in the low pressure point, but it's going to leave that gold sitting in this fine sandy material. Now what's below that silty material? Well, I'll have to dig down and find out. Anyway, I'll set the sluice up. We might just do a quick couple of pans just to this loose material on top, and I'll show you the gold that's in it. And then we might have a little bit of a dig and go a bit further down and see what we can find. As you can see, it was very loosely packed, sandy material that came off that. Now that's just back down to that real fine silt. And that first dish, just out of that real white material, produced that. So you do have areas where you will get gold in very fine, loosely packed material, but you have to know what you're looking for to find those areas, and you have to understand how floods change the high and low pressure areas and how it's going to affect the build-up of material as the floodwater is dying down. These things are very rare to come across. Most of the times, whenever you pan something that's very light and sandy and very loosely packed, you're generally going to find very, very little. It'll be very, very fine flour gold. But say you do get these areas where it does happen. I've run a couple of buckets of sieve material through, and I've deliberately done something wrong so that I can show you not to make the same mistake. So I'm dry sieving at the moment. So the material that I'm putting through looks like this. It's not dry, but if you squeeze it, it will go into clump. Now what's that mean if you're feeding that through the sluice? What it means is if you've got anything in there that is clumped together, I can get it out without breaking it. It is clumped together like that bit there. It'll roll before it breaks up, so it'll make its way down the sluice. The second thing is, and it's probably not so bad with this because it's got a bit of moisture in it, is that it creates surface tension with the gold. And what I mean by surface tension is the gold will float on top of the water until the surface tension is broke, and then it will drop. So I'm doing a couple of things wrong, and what that is resulting in is instead of the gold dropping up here and in these first few riffles, is the gold is making its way all the way down here, down into the end of it. What's that mean? It means if there's gold down here, there's gold floating back down there that I've put through it. So there's another reason why that has happened. And what I did with the last bucket I put through is I just continually put the scoops in one after another. I didn't pause between the scoops. So what that does is, because you're actually working an area that virtually is concentrate because it's in behind a bar of rock, is you've got a lot of material there that is of a specific gravity, meaning it's heavy. So when you dump a scoop load in, your riffles will actually fill up with this heavy material, and if you don't give it time to clear, the next scoop you put in, any of the heavies like gold won't drop into those top riffles. It'll slide over them and just keep going until it gets down to there. And that's why we've got little specks of gold. Even up here we've got little specks of gold, and I can see little bits of gold in there. Because you're loading the riffles up and you're not giving them a chance to clear. You're not giving that water a chance to work the material and make it boil out. So I just thought I'd point that out, because I say that's one of the good things about actually pausing and just having a look. If you're seeing gold down here, you've got something wrong. It's either you're feeding it too fast, your angle's not right, or you've not prepared your material correctly before putting it in. And I say clay material, clay will help drag the gold along, so you really got to work that clay and bring it back to a liquid so you don't have any balls in there. Alright, so I'm going to add some water to that bucket now, give it a good stir, and then I'll just slowly feed it in, scoop at a time, and just pause between each scoop. Watch the riffles, make sure they clear before the next scoop goes in. Now, I was going to dry sieve what was coming out from behind there into the bucket before feeding it into the sluice, but it is that clay and sticky that it won't go through the sieve very well. It takes a lot of work to push it through the sieve. You can see just how quickly it blocked that sieve up with clay material. And of course I wanted to know what was in that clay, so I took some of that clay material and panned it. And of course there was gold in it. So I'm going to have to just put up with the cold water and start wet sieving the material into the bucket. Now that I've got some material in that little sluice and there's some gold in there, I'm going to try and demonstrate what happens behind a ledge as the water flow changes and alters. So this is something I recommend you don't do when you're actually sluicing, because this is how you'll lose gold. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the camera up over the sluice and point it down at the riffles, and you will be able to see the material that's built up right to the top of the riffles on the back side. And I'm just going to pull the flare up on the front and just start reducing the amount of water that's running through the sluice. And you'll be able to see what happens to that material that's currently built up behind the riffles. You'll see it start to chew out. Now that's the same as what happens down behind that bar of rock as the floodwaters decrease. Now you'll probably see some gold move. Don't panic. Yes, I'm probably going to lose a bit out the back. It's all to show you guys what it's all about and try and understand how it all works. So if I lose a bit of gold, it won't be the first time. So I'll just quickly show you the gold that's in there, and then I'll set the camera up over the sluice and I'll restrict the amount of water that's going through. I'll reduce it and you'll be able to see that material start to work out from behind the riffles. So there would be, I can see about 20 or so colours there at the head of it now. You can see some gold off to the side there. You can see a couple of bits there. You can see there's a bit of material built up behind those riffles. So what's going to happen is, as I lift the flare at the front, it's going to reduce the amount of water that's travelling across those riffles, and it will affect the amount of, or will affect the material sitting behind it, and you'll actually see it start to boil away. Exactly what I was talking about earlier with the bar of rock as the floodwater reduces. So you've seen how that took the material away from behind that last riffle. As the water pressure reduced, it allowed that pressure, instead of it travelling straight across and having that low pressure point directly behind it, the water pressure kept on dragging it away until eventually, when there was virtually no flow, it was dropping straight down and pulled it away. So that's what happens. Now, that gold moved a little bit at the top, but it didn't move very far. And I say what it did do is it actually removed a lot of that material that was behind these riffles and moved it further down. Now when I start feeding it again, it'll all build up behind that last riffle again. Now, just while I've got the camera sitting right there, you'll notice the V. I've talked about the V in the water before. You can see the V joins there, and the water rises up, and it creates a low pressure point in that V. Because the pressure's lifting up, the water's lifting up, it creates a low pressure point there. And as it comes back down, like that's the high point there, as it comes back down, it pushes down. This is why it's all clean in here, because the water is pushing down on that, and then it hits this and rises again, and that's why you've got material in there. It's hard with the sun where it is, because you're seeing the shadow where I'm trying to point. So the same principle when you're looking at bars of rock along a creek. You've got to try and always think about what's happening with the floodwater as the water hits it. Is it pushing it up and creating a low pressure point behind it, or is the water pushing down and boiling out from behind the rock? So when you get those areas, I'll turn around so the sun's not beating in on you. So when you see those areas behind a bit of rock and it's all boiled out, it's because the water's pushing down and it's pushing all the material out from behind it. You see an area behind a rock where the gravel's built up, or there's lots of gravel behind it, the water's probably pushing up. You want to look for the spots where the water's pushing up. In saying that, where you see a bar of rock and on the back side it's boiled out, the next logical spot to look is as the water's boiling down behind the rock, it lifts up and it creates that low pressure point, the same as the V in the sluice. And if you see a big boil hole, generally a bit further down, you'll actually see a hump of gravel. So that's where your gold's going to be sitting, in that hump of gravel behind the boil hole. Here's a good example of how the gravels get lifted during a flood and then redeposited on top. So you can see this hole of water is quite large. The main flow's over there. So what's happening is during a flood, this is actually getting eroded out, and it's lifting all the gravels that are deposited here. Many layers of gravels have been lifted out and redeposited on top, just downstream from this hole. Now, a good place to start looking would be just at the rise of that hump. You can just see there's some largish rock there. Just there, any gold that's coming up would drop out, a bit like a sluice. Hits that point there and it just drops out of the flow where the large rocks are. All right, get back down here, keep digging, keep sifting, keep feeding it through the sluice. And hopefully, in a couple of hours' time, we'll end up with some nice gold. I've very carefully panned off the concentrate into a bucket. And I got down to this. Try and get around here and just show you the colour as it comes up. So that's not bad for 4 half buckets of dry sieved material. Well, that might do me for the day. I've got other things I've got to go and do this afternoon, so that's not bad for a few hours spent classifying and running the little river sluice. Yeah, so I hope that's helped a few of you identify these areas that actually, they're a little bit unusual, that will hold gold. I say that you don't come across them very often, but when you do, as you see, the results are quite often quite surprising and pretty good. So for those locals that follow my videos, I'm going to walk away from this. I say, it's up to you guys. If you like doing a bit of exploring and a bit of adventuring, you can figure out where I am. The gold's just there waiting for you. And to all those that aren't local, I hope that has helped you identify areas. I say, I know it's not as dry cut and as easy as what a lot of videos will make out. You can just go and find gold. There's a little bit behind it, but the more you do, the better you'll get at it. And take the time and be observant about what's around you and what's going on. Even to the point of when you're actually running a river sluice like I've been doing, look at the tailings and how they actually form in the creek. Because I say, you can see those low pressure areas where your fines build up. And that's all from running that sluice today. And I say, just picking your head up from what you're doing and having a look around will teach you a lot about where gold settles. Alright, that's enough of me talking. I'll go and cut some firewood. Even though I'm in a t-shirt today, we had snow this past week. So more than likely we're going to get a couple more cold days yet, but it's starting to pick up. We're getting warmer weather through the day. Alright, well, I hope wherever you are, you're finding lots of yellow. Get out there and get into it. It's out there waiting for you. And until the next video, have a good one, and I'll talk to you later.